Hey guys, welcome back to this week's edition of the Weekly Sportscast with your hosts, Jay Gould and Brandon Skinner. This week's episode is brought to you by the greatest comeback in sports history, LeBron James' hairline.
We're excited to talk to you guys about the NBA All-Defensive and All-NBA teams. We're going to wrap up both conference finals and then get into Game 1 of the NBA Finals, Cavs vs. Warriors Part 4. And then we'll wrap it up with our weekly Jags Corner. Let's get into it.
What you rockin' ZO2s? I'm blowing past from ZO2. You know I got a ZO2. Pay respect and pay your dues. Switching lanes, ZO2.
Alright, so we're going to begin with the All-NBA first team. And these are all the superstars of our league, except for one, but we'll get into that. We open with Anthony Davis, a possible MVP candidate. He had a phenomenal year, especially after Boogie Cousins. Any extra thoughts about AD?
He's just a big hoss in the paint. I mean, you can't really stop him. He's playing his prime position now, power forward, instead of playing center. And as he was going through this year...
Well, he had to play center in the finals. I'm sorry, the playoffs.
Okay, well, as he went through this year, and when Boogie Cousins getting hurt, yeah, that sucked for DeMarcus Cousins, but it allowed Anthony Davis to come into his own and be the sole superstar on a pretty good Pelicans team. So, yeah, that's a good pick, I think.
I agree. He completely thrived in that system. I mean, he's good at everything. Defense, he has range, he has the paint, he can assist, too. He got a triple-double with blocks, like, on his birthday. Like, come on.
Yeah,
you can't get much better than that. Second player on the All-NBA first team, Kevin Durant. Another phenomenal year from the Snake himself.
The Cupcake? That man's a big hoss. Another 7-foot dude. He's a big, long boy. Yeah, he can shoot with the best of them. He shoots like a guard. He handles the ball like a guard, but he's also 7 feet tall. It's hard not to put a guy on there. Probably the best scorer in our league. And, yeah, another good
one of the
solid
best scorers in history, although he can't dunk, but that's okay. He also averaged a career high in blocks this year, which we'll get into in the all defensive teams. James Harden of the Rockets, my MVP. I don't know about yours, Brandon.
James Harden, the beard. He had a good season. Yeah, he played well.
Just good?
I mean, he had an all right season. It wasn't no LeBron James season. You know how it is. But he played all right. Led the first place Rockets to 65 wins or something like that.
65 and 17.
65 and 17. They played very well, and so there's a reason why he's definitely a front running candidate for the MVP. So
the first 60-point triple-double in NBA history.
Yeah, once.
I guess. But, and then our last forward, LeBron James.
What else is there to say? Yeah.
82 games for the first time in his career. He did everything for this Cavs team. He punched them. They pushed and pulled, but he dragged them to the finals. We wrap up with Damian Lillard.
Damian Lillard.
Am I reading that right?
Maybe. I mean, we wrote down Damian Lillard, so I don't know. But this is probably the most controversial selection for this first team All-NBA. And, I mean, Damian Lillard had a great season. He averaged probably a career high in points, 26.9 I think it was, scoring 27 points a game, and he led his Portland Trail Blazers to the third seed in the Western Conference, I think it is. He also rapped.
Yes, the Western Conference.
Yeah, the Western Conference. He also rapped some this year. He played...
Dame Dollar.
Dame Dollar, you know how it is. But, so yeah, Dame, he played well, but a lot of times when you're thinking about it, he's not... When you think of top-tier NBA superstars, he's not one of the first ones that comes to into your mind. And also, it doesn't help that his Portland Trail Blazers got swept in the playoffs by
our boy Anthony Davis.
His Pelicans and
again, I would consider Damian Lillard a superstar, but he's not a top 10 player. Definitely like top 15, top 20. But I mean, again, he had a career year. He had a phenomenal year. Good job for Dame, and that wraps up the All NBA first team.
And like I said,
to the
second one. All right. The All-NBA second team opens up with LaMarcus Aldridge of the San Antonio Spurs. He's the power forward in Greg Popovich's system, and he played very well on a very depleted Spurs roster. It seems to be the worst San Antonio Spurs team we've seen in maybe the last 5 or 10 years.
Probably in Popovich's era, this is the worst team.
Yeah, probably under Popovich's regime, this is probably the worst team we've seen, but LaMarcus Aldridge played well as the focal point of a team, and he had a career year playing very well and led their San Antonio Spurs to the 7th seed in the West. So, good for him.
He thrived as a number 1 option, and him and Pop kind of like, just like how LeBron did the Cavs, they kind of, LaMarcus and Pop willed this very mediocre Spurs team to a playoff berth, the 7th seed in the Western Conference, which is nothing to scoff about. Moving on, Giannis.
Obviously. The Greek Freak, he is another just freak athlete who does everything for his team on a very underwhelming Milwaukee Bucks team. Everyone had very high expectations for them this year, but they ended up only getting the 7th seed in the Eastern Conference, playing the Boston
They took
Celtics.
the Celtics to 7.
They took them to 7, yes, but they
Almost entirely because of Giannis. The Bucks had a solid supporting cast around Giannis this year, with John Henson at center. Bledsoe, they traded for Bledsoe in October, and he kind of underperformed there. But Giannis, again, a career year. He is...
You're forgetting a guy, though. Matthew Dellavedova.
Oh, forgive me. Delly, a little bit injured, the Aussie, the Thunder from down under.
Yes, sir.
Their rookie of the year, Malcolm Brogdon, also injured, so that was a partial factor. But yes, this Bucks team underperformed, but Giannis did not.
Giannis played very well, yes.
Second team.
And he's only 22 years old. He's
24.
Wow. That man's growing up a big hoss, so he's playing well, and he deserves to be on the second team in All-NBA.
Yeah, he has potential. I think when LeBron retires, Giannis and AD will be vying for the best player on the planet right now. We got our guard for the All-NBA second team, DeMar DeRozan. Sorry, DeRozan. This is a regular season award, so that's why you see some questionable names on here. DeRozan, besides the playoffs, he also had a career year. Dwayne Casey made some tweaks this year, which really helped unlock the offense. That's why they finished 59 wins, second best record in the league, best in the Eastern Conference.
Yeah, he played well. The combination of him and Kyle Lowry pretty much thrived this year. He had, like you said, he had a career year, and he played all right. But the playoffs were a different story as they got swept by the Cavaliers again. LeBron James just did whatever he wanted to them. But this is a regular season award, so good for DeMar DeRozan.
Good in the regular season.
Mm-hmm.
We got Joel Embiid,
JoJo. He plays for the Philadelphia 76ers, as we all know. The process.
He is the process.
He is the process, and I trust him. I trust the process. He stayed healthy for the most part this year, which he has not been able to do for the past couple years. He stayed healthy. He played most of the games throughout the season, and him and Ben Simmons really tore it up this year. And he did very well, and is now becoming more respected as probably a top 5 big man in this league. Don't you think?
I agree with that. He's showing why he was valued so high in the draft, and showing why the Sixers' diligence in resting him finally paid off. This man is a monster. He is a phenomenal player. Him and Simmons are two. That's a great dynasty in the making.
And he's Big Macs before games, so he's just a big man, isn't he?
That's true. He gets some foot massages before games.
Oh, baby.
Report. We'll conclude the All-NBA second team with another questionable addition, Russell Westbrook.
God bless.
One of my least favorite players in the league, but nonetheless, he did average another triple-double.
Barely.
Because he boxed out his teammates, but that's not the point. He had a great year. His athleticism, he's still in his prime. He's going to be good until he's old.
Older. Yeah, he's
in like 2 years.
Yeah, he is probably the most exciting basketball player to watch in today's NBA. He's just an athletic freak. He's an athletic monster, and even though he would never, hot take, he'll never win an NBA championship with Russell Westbrook as the focal point of an offense of a team. He is a great individual player, even though he does not make the players around him much better. Case in point, Victor Oladipo.
Correct. Although, to kind of play a little devil's advocate with what you just said, he did lead the league in assists per game, which I don't know if you consider that making players better, but showing maybe a little better chemistry with his team. I think part of that helped because he had one superstar in Paul George and a washed-up superstar in Carmelo Anthony.
So talking about Oladipo, this brings us to the third team NBA, featuring as the first guard. Oh, I guess he's a guard or whatever he is.
Guard.
Jimmy Butler, right?
Yeah.
Jimmy Butler playing for the Minnesota Timberwolves. He's a solid dude in this league. He's arguably one of the best two-way guards in this league, and he played well on a very underperforming Minnesota Timberwolves team. Many thought that they'd have a very high ceiling and perhaps even come out of the Western Conference this year with their big three of Andrew Wiggins, Karl Anthony Towns, and Jimmy Butler. But they underperformed, and they got the 8th seed in the West, and their season ended up fizzling out against the Houston Rockets in the first round.
Jimmy still had a great year. Yeah. He was the cornerstone of this weak Tim's defense, which there wasn't much, but he was a lone bright spot there. He always does this thing. He's a top 25 player in this league. we'll move on to our other guard, the notorious Stephen Curry.
Stephen Curry.
The only reason he's on the third team is because he was plagued by injuries.
Yeah, he was hurt this year. He's hurt this year. He got hurt toward the end of the year, and he missed something like 25
got hurt like
games.
3 separate times.
Yeah, he missed a lot of time this year, which is one of the contributing factors to why the Warriors didn't have their usual 65, 70 wins
Correct.
throughout this dynasty. He missed a lot of time, and so that was obviously not very good, but he was healthy for the playoffs, and when he was in the game in the regular season, he played very well and got his usual Steph numbers, shimmying and hitting threes and stuff of that nature.
Correct. I mean, when he's healthy, he's still one of the best scorers in history, the best point guard in the game right now, and,
What else can you say?
I guess so.
Moves us on to the third player in this All-NBA third team, Victor Oladipo. Victor Oladipo got away from Russell Westbrook, thank God, this year in this offseason, going back home to the Indiana Pacers. Not home, but going to the Indiana Pacers. And he was the number one option in this offense, and he really thrived in this, especially playing with such a very average Indiana Pacers team. Besides him, he showed out and he did his thing, playing well on both sides of the ball in offense and defense. And again, he had a career year, as I said.
Yeah, again, it's the Russell Westbrook factor. You leave him and you get better. I love this guy. I mean,
he's a
hot
beast, yeah.
take. I think he may be the best shooting guard in the East. I know DeMar DeRozan's out there, but I just love Oladipo in his game. I'm glad to see him I'm glad to see the Pacers don't have to completely tank after trading Paul George, because they got Oladipo and Sabonis back in that trade. Sabonis also a very prominent role player. So yeah, good for Oladipo. And then our fourth All-NBA 13 player is
the guy that left the Indiana Pacers in this offseason, Paul George. Paul George left the Indiana Pacers to go to the Oklahoma City Thunder to play in the supposed big three of Russell Westbrook, Paul George, and Carmelo Anthony. And their season didn't go as great as expected. But Paul George played very well. He had one of his best defensive years ever. He played very well in defense. He was in the top
5 in steals, I believe.
Yeah, he played very well on defense. He also had he regressed a little bit in his offensive game, but that can be attributed to Russell Westbrook's extreme ball dominance and just ball hogginess and selfishness. But we can get into that. That's a discussion for another time. Paul George played well. He played at an all-star level, as he was brought to Oklahoma City to do, and he deserves to be on this third team, I think.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, his 3 shooting got better, which is ever so more important in today's league. He's like the classic definition of a 3-and-D player. I mean, he got the steals, he got the range, and he's on this All-NBA third team. Moving on to our final player on the All-NBA third team, a big man, one of my favorite young stars in the league. I know you don't like him that much, Brandon, but it's Karl Anthony Towns, the cat man. Yeah,
Karl Anthony Towns, the second Minnesota Timberwolves to be featured on this All-NBA third team. He played a pretty good regular season. He's a big man. He's got to be at least 7 feet. He's a long guy. He can shoot the threes. He can drive. He's a very athletic dude, and he played well in the regular season. My only gripe with him is that you can't score 8 points a game in the playoffs as essentially a number one option on a playoff team. He very underperformed in this season. In the postseason, my bad. And that just made him look bad to me. That left a bad taste in my mouth when it comes to Karl Anthony Towns. But as we said earlier, this is a regular season award. But if it was up to me, I probably would not have put him on any of these 3 All-NBA teams.
I disagree with you there. I think he's definitely deserving of the third All-NBA spot for a big man. I mean, he's also one of the best center scorers in the league. I mean, you said his range, his post game, he got it all. He can pass a little too. The problem is his defense and, again, his playoffs performance. But this guy's young. He's in his 3rd year in the league. He's the number 1 overall pick in 2015. And the Tims have a bright future with that talented yet unproducing roster.
Yep. And so moving on from that, the team that ended up ending Karl Anthony Towns' playoff run this year, the Houston... Oh, no, never mind. We're going into the All-NBA defensive teams now. So the first team, we're starting off with the guard Robert Covington.
Rocco, he was a former G Leaguer. He was a former G Leaguer. I mean, it's good to see the process show a little bit of his magic in him too. Mm-hmm. He is a great defender. He's a very underrated part of the Sixers' offense and defense, their whole system as a whole. He thrives with Brett Brown. And, I mean, he has Embiid to block for him, too, if somebody gets by him. So, yeah, good for him.
I feel like he's a really good stereotypical 3-and-D guy in today's league. He shoots the 3-ball well, and he plays great defense. Obviously, he's on this first team. So I think I feel that's a very solid pick by the NBA, putting him on this team. And that brings us to our second player on this team, the aforementioned Anthony Davis on this first team all defense.
A star. I don't know
raw.
what to say. The brow can block. As I said before, a triple-double in blocks on his birthday. That's just scratching the surface of his defensive potential.
Mm-hmm. He's just uber athletic. He's has good instincts, and he's just tall and has a good wingspan, and so it's very hard to shoot over him. And any shots around the basket, he has an effect on, and that makes the other opponent's team field goal percentage near the basket go down a lot, and this is why he's in this position, which is another solid pick, I think, for this first team.
Correct. Moving on to our second guard on the All-NBA defensive teams, we have Victor Oladipo, again the aforementioned star, surprise star, I guess. We also Westbrook effect.
What's going on in there?
I'm sorry?
I just woke myself out of a slumber. I just heard something that is blasphemy. I heard that Victor Oladipo something is on the all-defensive NBA team. That is not okay. Let me tell you right now. This man led the league in steals. Steals is not a valid indicator of good defense. We see Russell Westbrook on a regular basis entering the pass lanes because he doesn't want to play defense on a man, because he's willing to get inside the pass lane just to get those numbers on the fast break. That's something that we've seen all year from a lot of different guys that like to fill up the stat sheet, and something from Victor Oladipo that I just don't like to tolerate. On ball wise, he's an average defender at best. I see many other guys that do a much better job, but he does get a lot of steals, and I mean, I guess I give him some credit for that. However, it's just such a one-dimensional defense, and it's just something I don't believe in.
Brandon, did I fail to mention our guest speaker for this week's episode?
I think you did. This week we have a guest speaker by the name of Brendan Murphy.
Clapping for himself.
Clapping for himself. He's a NBA insider, and he's going to be our NBA analyst today, helping us talk about these all-NBA defensive teams and talking about our man, Victor Oladipo.
Thank you so much, Brandon. One more thing that I wanted to add in that I heard while I was in my slumber was that Robert Covington is somebody that I don't think belongs on this list. You know, honestly, if you look at the Sixers lineup throughout the year, you see a lot of times they were starting either T.J. McConnell or Markelle Fultz at point guard position.
Markelle Fultz was injured for 68 games, I believe.
So T.J. McConnell or Markelle Fultz either played the point guard position for the majority of the year, and Ben Simmons ended up playing the small forward.
Ben Simmons is a point guard.
It's true, but sometimes they didn't play him at point guard, even when he should have been able to play. They also played J.J. Redick at the shooting guard, and then they played the big man in the middle, obviously, Joel Embiid.
JoJo.
The thing about it is that, Robert Covington simply didn't play with the starters the majority of the time. He was coming off the bench. Mm-hmm. And I frankly don't believe that somebody on the first defensive all-team can really be guarding bench players and be considered one of the elite defenders in the NBA. That's just something that I definitely don't believe.
Okay.
That's some fair points that are completely wrong. Moving on to the...
Talking about Victor Oladipo.
Oh,
we haven't talked about him.
Still on Oladipo?
This man talks about wrong facts about my man Victor Oladipo. Victor Oladipo, in the offseason, he went through a complete body change. He got leaner, he got stronger, he got faster, and it definitely showed this year in his defensive presence. On the court, he played very well. He defended the ball very well, and he had, like you said, he led the league in steals.
2.3 per game.
2.3 steals per game is big man moves, and he played very well and led those transition opportunities for the Indiana Pacers, which ended up helping them get their 5th seed in the East.
It's a shame you left the Magic. It's a shame.
It's a shame, yeah.
Magic, the developmental powerhouse of the league, yes.
They're getting there.
Yeah, I agree. This moves us on to the next guard featured on this first team All-NBA is
Drew
Holiday.
One of my favorite players in the league. He's very undervalued.
Mm-hmm.
He was the second key to this beautiful Pelicans offense after Boogie went down.
Mm-hmm.
But his defense is where he made his name.
Yeah, let's be clear. I mean, Drew Holiday came in as an all-star point guard the second half of the season after Boogie went down, and we just saw somebody really grow as a player, somebody we haven't seen in years past when he was always like the 4th or 5th option and just the bare minimum starting point guard in the NBA. And now it seems a lot like he's really the second option, at least while Boogie's injured, for Anthony Davis, although their playoff run ended early, we definitely saw a lot of flashes of good passing, good scoring, and a lot of ability on the defensive end, which is something we haven't seen out of him in the past.
Mm-hmm.
Correct. The Pelicans averaged 9 fewer points when he was on the court.
9 fewer points when he was on the court. Like
Allowed or
they gave
scored?
up. They gave up 9 fewer points per.
When he was on the court.
Yeah, okay.
100 possessions, which is unbelievable.
Unbelievable. He
I
played
mean,
well.
yeah.
And
He's
even
worthy
thinking
of the
about
spot.
that, I mean, that effect on defense as a point guard when you're not the primary scoring option all the time, it shows the defensive prowess that he brings
I
to the
agree.
table.
I agree. And this brings us to the last person on this first team All NBA defensive team, and that's your man, Rudy Gobert.
Rudy Gobert, another one of my favorite players. He did good for you, Brendan, in fantasy, I believe.
He did do very well for me in fantasy. I did. I won the week.
Okay, don't
yeah,
have to flex.
barely.
Gobert, he's always been a defensive powerhouse,
Mhm.
and ever since he came into the league, he's my pick for Defensive Player of the Year. The Jazz, people may not remember this, but in November, December, the Jazz were 10 games under 500, looked to be a lost season, but then Rudy Gobert came back from his lagging leg problems in January, and they won 28-5 after he came back, securing the 4th seed in the tough Western Conference, beating the supposed powerhouse OKC in 5 games.
And honestly, all kidding aside, Rudy Gobert to me does deserve Defensive Player of the Year. I believe a lot of things that he does on the defensive end as the Stifle Tower, as we call him.
There's a reason he has that name.
The long arms and just the ability to block shots that one couldn't ever think to block. But one thing that I think his value is underrated as is that people now with Donovan Mitchell coming in as the new rookie of the future and the new player that's going to become a great star in this league, we forget a lot of times about Rudy Gobert, and I think one thing that he did throughout the season was provide an amazing second or even sometimes first option for Donovan to defer to whenever he wasn't feeling as hot as usual, or maybe he was feeling good and so he could just focus on his rebounding and defensive areas. And I think one of the best, even though he's not a role player, one of the best role-playing stars in the league is Rudy Gobert.
Yeah, I agree. This moves us right on to our the All NBA defensive second team, and this is headlined by our man, as we talked about earlier, Jimmy Butler. Jimmy Butler. Jimmy Butler, as we said earlier, was on the defensive anchor of that Minnesota Timberwolves team, and even though they didn't have the best defense in the league, he was a great defender for them in, was it Tom Thibodeau's system?
That boy Thibs,
That boy
correct.
Thibs.
Butler had 1.97 steals per game, which was the 4th best in the league, which is considering that he missed like 20 games towards the end of the season. So this guy's just a menace to opposing offenses. I love his game. I love seeing him succeed. Hopefully the Tims can do more next year.
Arguably the best two-way guard in the entire NBA. So yeah.
Klay Thompson.
Klay Thompson, he's mediocre. All right. This moves on. Joel Embiid is another member of this All NBA
A great
defensive
rising
second team.
defensive player.
Great rising defensive player. He's 7 feet tall. He's African. He's big, and he can he's a beast in the paint, and it's hard to score around him.
And
yeah.
one thing to notice about Joel Embiid is last year we a lot of times saw him as just strictly an offensive force, and this year he really redefined his game to do both sides of the ball, and is now definitely one of the top 3 centers in the league, I would say, especially with
He's top
Whiteside
5.
falling out of the equation.
Whiteside was never there.
This moves us on to the perennial all defensive team member, Draymond Green of the Golden State Warriors.
Someone you either hate or you love, honestly.
And I love that man. He's
I love to hate him.
I hate
to love him.
I love to love him, and he's not the biggest dude on the court, but he's strong and he's nasty. He's tough, and he's the enforcer of that Golden State team that is usually considered to be fairly soft and not kind of ground and pound type team. He is the one guy that goes in there and he does his thing, and he gets blocks, he gets steals, and he does his thing. He had a triple double with steals or with steals one time, I think. He ate.
And I like to think of the Warriors as a bunch of farmers, honestly. I like to think of them, and they really like the crops are the NBA, and they just keep reaping the rewards. But every farmer needs a donkey, and to be honest, that is Draymond Green. Let's be honest.
He looks like one.
He looks like a donkey. Oh my gosh.
Yeah, he had 1.3 steals and 1.3 blocks per game. Constant glue guy on O&D for this
I think it's just the eye
possible
test with him,
dynasty.
honestly. You can see how good of a defensive player he is.
Yeah, another guy you can see. Yeah, you can't always see how good he is, but the stat sheet shows it and his team record shows it. Is Al Horford as on this NBA second team, and as we about to say here on the weekly Sportscast, he is the second best glue guy in the league, behind Draymond Green. He's a defensive anchor for that Boston Celtics team with a lot of young talent on there. He's pretty much the sole veteran on there. He locks down the defensive end, and he just plays very fundamental defense, and he doesn't take too many risks, and he plays well. So.
Correct. He really helped move this Celtics team through some of the rougher parts of their playoff run. And I mean, he can go everywhere. He can guard on the perimeter too, which is especially important for a big man in today's league. And then we have yet again another questionable choice for our final option on the team. Dejounte Murray of the San Antonio Spurs.
It's definitely somebody that not all of us have watched. It's not a household name like most of these guys, but he's definitely somebody that Popovich in San Antonio appreciates at every level. We see these young guys coming in with this athleticism that maybe some of the older guys don't have. And although maybe they're not scoring as much, they're definitely showing their importance on the defensive end by the ability to move their feet, even if they're only scoring a couple points a game, and that is Dejounte Murray.
Yeah, I had this guy on NBA Live Mobile when I played it, and he was just a menace on there for me. His stats cannot be underrated. He was like an 82 on there, man. He was good, and it shows in his actual play in the league. I think he's only a second or third year player. For a point guard or for a guard, he's long, he's got good instincts, and under that Greg Popovich coaching scheme and that system, he has thrived in there, helping a sort of subpar San Antonio Spurs team lock down the defensive end of the ball and get to the playoffs. So yeah, I would agree with that pick. I think he's a good player, and he's definitely on the rise in my opinion.
You could have put Paul George there.
Could have put Paul George in there, but...
Let me get started about Paul George. Let me stop for a second. All right, guys. Let's just talk about the Thunder. The biggest disappointment, without a doubt, of this season. I mean, you just look back and you see the talent that they were going to have. The Paul George, the Russell Westbrooks of the world, the Carmelo Anthonys, the Steven Adams, the rising star that he is. The fact is simply that Carmelo Anthony is not the third option on this team anymore. Let's face it. He may not even be the fifth. Steven Adams is a rising player in this league. Deserves to be on the all-defensive team. And we see in every way his rebounding and defense on the floor every night. So let's just talk about the fact that Paul George doesn't deserve the credit that he's given. I frankly don't.
Oh, wow. That's a spicy take.
Let's hear it.
I think, first of all, if we look at the Thunder and how they're structured, it's such a selfish offense. And Paul George was definitely designed to be the person that was not supposed to be the selfish aspect of the team. But what we saw was games where he would shoot 1 for 27. And obviously that's an exaggeration.
That's the Houston Rockets, my guy. That's not Paul George.
That's over 27.
That's over 27.
Anyways, just somebody I don't think necessarily should always be given the praise that he gets.
Okay, that's a fair statement, even though it's wrong.
I think you're sleeping on him.
I think you're sleeping on him.
He's an amazing defender.
I agree.
And
he's 6'9". He's a big man.
He's a big man in a small forward
in a small forward body. So, good point, but wrong. Okay, so this moves us on to the NBA Conference Finals, and as we all know, they just wrapped up recently. Both series going to 7 games, and both series giving us some great players, some headlining players, and some great basketball. Great competition, and we'll start off with the Cavs Celtics, I think. Game 5, there's not too much to say about that. The Celtics, they won at home like they're supposed to do. They won in the Garden, and they beat the Cavaliers. The Celtics won in the Garden and beat the Cavaliers, and took a 3-2 lead in the series, which is often a death sentence for most teams. But then again, most teams don't have LeBron James. In Game 6, Kevin Love got hurt very early in the game. He
collided with Jason Tatum 5 minutes in.
Yeah.
Tatum stayed in.
A horrible injury.
Tatum stayed in, had a great game. I don't know how that happened, but Love ended up missing the rest of the series.
Yeah, and so LeBron even had more to shoulder in that series, and he came through, scored tons of points, tons of rebounds, tons of assists, and really just put that substandard team on his back. But he got some unexpected help from Jeff Green in this series. God, I know you hate Jeff Green, but...
I cannot stand Jeff Green, but he had a good game, 14 points. Love's injury opened up time for Green and Larry Nance, one of our favorite players on the show. He had 10 points on 5 of 5 shooting, 7 boards, and 2 steals in only 22 minutes.
Oh yeah, Nance did.
Before we go on, let me just say, George Hill. I mean, game 6, he was the guy. The fact is, he had 20 points. And he made a difference on the floor when everybody else was not scoring. As Kevin Love went out with 0 points total to his name, Tristan Thompson 2 points, unacceptable, honestly, in my opinion, for a starting center. 5 points for J.R. Smith, somebody who's a perennial starter in this league and has been in the NBA Finals before with LeBron James. It's just unacceptable. But then again, LeBron James has the game of his life, scores 46 with a plus-minus of plus 15, which is ridiculous. And in the end, I mean, the Cavs did win this game 109-99. And this is actually in wake of a great game by some of the Celtic players, the youngins that we see on this team. Terry Rozier, who's had amazing runs at home, actually had a good game on the road this time. Shot 6 for 10 from three-point land, which is a huge amount of points right there, scored 28 points. And Jaylen Brown also played very well, who's now found a jump shot, it seems like, in this league.
I guess so, yeah. And when he's not guarded by Kyle Korver, yeah, he can actually shoot the ball. So that's great. And after that, they tied up that series 3-3. We can move on to Game 7, where we all know what happened. The Cavaliers ended up winning the series 4-3. And again, my boy, Jeff Green, played very well, scoring 19 points, getting 18 rebounds, and dishing out 1 assist. And he shot 7 for 14 from the field, which is, if you can't do that math, that's 50%, people. And
there's a couple,
good, yeah.
And there's a couple storylines of this series. I mean, especially Game 6 and 7 we look at. You know, you can talk about how LeBron James has no help, how LeBron is really having one of the best playoffs, if not the best playoff of his entire career.
This might be the best postseason run by one player.
Without a doubt. And we see LeBron every night put in the work, do great games and whatnot. But another storyline that we could talk about is really the arrival of one of the youngest stars in this league, Jason Tatum. He's really shown up in Game 6, 7 for 13, nothing crazy, still scored 15 points, but then he really came to shine when it came to Game 7. I mean, that was really the impressive game that he had. And we didn't see a high-scoring game in this one. We saw the Cavaliers score a low amount of points, and we saw the Celtics score a low amount of points. But the one thing that stood out from the Celtics, with another monster game by LeBron James, by the way, was Jason Tatum. Simply scoring 24 with 7 rebounds and an assist to his name. Just a wonderful player, and the plus-minus on him was minus 17, so it just shows how bad his team is playing.
Growing pains, man.
They're a very young
Game 7, it was a gritty defensive win. That's all you need to get to the finals.
Yeah.
Congrats to LeBron, 8 finals in a row. That's unbelievable.
That's a good job.
And what about this long-lasting relationship between Tatum and LeBron? It's pretty cool, isn't it?
Jason Tatum, I think, went to one of his camps, or went to LeBron James' basketball camps growing up since he was like 12 years old. And LeBron, you can see pictures of him, LeBron James, taking pictures with the 12-year-old Jason Tatum when he's like down here, just a baby.
Now Jason's dunking on LeBron.
Now Jason's dunking on LeBron,
That's
baby,
right.
and him in the paint, and that was
one
of the most ridiculous dunks I've ever seen. It was Jason Tatum. It was, for me, that dunk symbolized an arrival of Jason Tatum as a perennial all-star, a perennial superstar in this league, and the future is very, very bright for this player. He's big, he can do everything. He's just a stud. So.
Although one might say that the mistake Jason Tatum made was getting in LeBron's face after dunking that ball, because LeBron James looked at him like, I'm your daddy. And you better believe he backed it up, finishing up the game and knocking down 2 threes in his face. A wonderful series in the end. And Cleveland, of course, wins 4-3. We just see another example of LeBron James is great.
Yeah, and Jeff Green. Don't forget him, because he's awesome, even though you don't like him.
Honestly, I believe that we only need 1 or 2 role players to step up for LeBron in any given series, and we can see great things.
That's what's happening in every series.
As long as LeBron scores at least 30, it seems like when somebody else steps up, I wish JR would step up with those threes. Frankly, I don't know about you guys. Do you think Kyle Korver should be starting at the 2 guard?
Yes. He hasn't played well in the Celtics series. He was a big part of their wins in Toronto and Indiana. But I don't know what it is. I don't know. He's just not successful right now. And he's doing all right in the bench. Korver.
And in my opinion, Kyle Korver should be starting over J.R. Smith. And
I think so.
I agree though, because J.R. Smith is too inconsistent with his performances. He can give you. I think the problem with him is early in his career, J.R. Smith was an electric player. He was very athletic and could knock down threes like it was nobody's business. And he still has that capability to knock down 5 threes in a game, but a lot of times that's all he's getting. Even in J.R. Smith's best games, he's only giving you 10 or 12 points with knocking down 2 or 3 threes, which is not super great for LeBron. But Kyle Korver gives you a better 3-point shooting percentage, and he gives you a better defender to guard the other guys. Like I said earlier, he was locking up Jaylen Brown for much of the series. Kyle Korver did, playing well against Jaylen Brown, kind of minimizing the damage that he could do on the Cavaliers. So Kyle Korver He's better than J.R. Smith right now. He's at 37
and
years
another
old.
thing to say that he should be starting is the fact that, there's something in this league, we see a lot of players that have brain-neutral plays. JaVale McGee does something dumb, or J.R. Smith is one of those guys that on a regular basis seems to be out of thinking with the game or not trying as hard as he should. Even though sometimes we've seen some great defensive plays out of him, we don't see it on a regular run, which we just saw with Game 1 of the finals. But
which we'll get
into that later. So I think one thing that we've seen out of Corver this entire playoffs is just effort. Even on the defensive end, he's stopping guys just by really trying to play defense and being passionate about it, regardless of his athleticism. So I think that's really important.
Yeah. And this moves us right along to the other conference final series, the Houston Rockets versus the Golden State Warriors. Probably one of the most controversial endings to a series that we've seen in a while. You want to talk about that, Jake?
Sure, we'll start with Game 5, which is another stellar performance from the entire Rockets squad. They won again in Houston that game. It was another controversial ending with Chris Paul's terrible injury, but, they continued everything that worked in Game 4. They had good behind-the-arc movement in that game, good 3 shooting, great boards from guys like P.J. Tucker, the role players just thriving in their roles. Good enough. Enough effort from everybody on the Rockets team.
Yeah, to me it seems that when the Rockets are hitting their threes, and this is why the Rockets... Okay, let me tell you this. The Rockets are a very inconsistent team, I would say. And I would say that because their game is so much based on shooting a 3-ball that when you have a terrible night like they ended up doing in Game 7, that they don't have much else to fall back on. So, like in Game 5, their 3-point shooting was lights out. They played very well, and they outscored probably one of the most prolific offensive teams in NBA history, the Golden State Warriors. And so it all looks fine and dandy on nights where they're hitting their threes, but a lot of times those threes just aren't falling, and they seldom switch it up and try something different. And in my opinion, they shouldn't shoot so many threes. It should be, in the playoffs, James Harden and Clint Capella should be doing pick and rolls every single play down the field, because no team in the NBA can guard that pick and roll on a consistent basis.
And honestly, I think we're being too easy on the Rockets here. We need to assign some blame to these guys. These guys let themselves down. They really blew this series. You look at the entirety of the series, one guy who played very well was Eric Gordon, somebody who really came out to play every night. And we've seen this in years past where James Harden just frankly doesn't show up as the superstar he is, as the MVP soon-to-be that he is. And we see things that aren't necessarily productive out of him. And then when Chris Paul goes down, it's time for him to step up, and we really didn't see it. But the one guy that I want to call out more than anybody else is Clint Capella. I want to call him out because until Game 7, I saw absolutely nothing out of him. I saw no effort on the rebounding end, losing rebounds to Stephen Curry, of all people, and all sorts of things where he was on the floor for a very extended amount of time and did not do anything well. Another thing that really bothers me, like Brandon said, is that they simply didn't use him offensively. And so he had no effort on the offensive end to get rebounds or anything like that. Something that he also didn't do was try on the defensive end. He's known as a shot blocker, a interior defender, somebody who can guard the post with ease and with his length and his size, and I just didn't see it out of him. And with the young star that he was this season, soon to be maybe even an all-star, I really wanted more out of him, and I really wanted to see him contribute. And it really sucked that he came in Game 7 and really played well the night that the Rockets decided to go 0 for 27. That's right, 0 for 27 from three-point land.
Well, Capella definitely tried in the defense. He's not a very good perimeter defender. And, the Warriors have amazing 3-ball shooters. So he was kind of limited in what he could... He was limited in what he could defend. It was not a good matchup towards his skill set.
To me, rebounding is effort. I feel like anybody can get rebounds if they have effort. We throw Russell Westbrook under the bus a lot of times because he doesn't give effort. He simply just gets the easy rebound. But some of these guys, like George Hill even, I've seen him get a lot of rebounds as a point guard.
Yeah.
And I think Capella, being the big man that he is, the athletic freak that he is, who is known as like an Andre Drummond who rebounds and blocks shots, to do that.
I feel like I agree with you with rebounding. Rebounding is so crucial for any NBA basketball team. Typically, if you out rebound a team, you're gonna win that game. And one person I'm about to put the spotlight on is P.J. Tucker. And
my man
P.J. Tucker. He played very well in Game 6 and 7 of this series. He fulfilled his role, and he played. Frankly, I would say almost better than James Harden or Eric Gordon.
I would agree.
He played. He was a dog. He was a hound on the offensive glass. Offensive rebounds from people such as Kevin Durant and JaVale McGee and just stuff like that. He finished the game with 14 points, 12 rebounds, and 2 assists. So double machine, and he played very well. He was a different maker for that Rockets team, even though they did not end up winning that game. So
another major factor in the Warriors winning that series was Kevin Durant scoring. He was a monster everywhere. I mean, he is one of the top scoring threats in the league, and they couldn't guard him. It's hard to guard a 7-foot guy that can space the floor and do everything except for dunk.
You know, the Rockets have really let me down a little bit in these playoffs because I was a guy that was really repping James Harden for MVP as well as Mike D'Antoni for Coach of the Year. And what I saw from Mike D'Antoni just wasn't what I wanted to see. I saw Gerald Green, somebody who is...
He's a joke.
Somebody who doesn't play anyway, who was a free agent at the beginning of the season, playing more minutes than some of their crucial bench players. And I'm taking a lot of shots, a sort of Nick Young kind of player, Swaggy P kind of like player, who just takes bad shots and can get hot from time to time, but also gets in his head some stuff that doesn't like. And I was disappointed by the job that D'Antoni did.
Yeah.
Two other main factors in the Rockets collapsing the series was Mike D'Antoni's 7-man rotation, which just got worse, especially after Chris Paul went down, which shows, I mean, these guys got fatigued. These guys aren't used to going to the finals. I mean, nobody on that team is. And James Harden, especially throughout his whole career, has been just bad in the playoffs.
It's true.
I mean, Matthew Dellavedova shoots better than him from 3 in the playoffs, which is unacceptable. And
yeah, I agree with your point about Mike D'Antoni. It's often a big gripe with him in the playoffs, and not so much the regular season because of rest, but a lot of times in the playoffs he plays his guys a lot. And going to a 7-man rotation in this series against the Warriors, especially after Chris Paul went down. This 7-man rotation really started to show the effects of fatigue, where oftentimes many of the starters on the Houston Rockets team were playing over 40 minutes a game, and this fatigue is certainly what contributed to them shooting over 27 in Game 7, and a historically awful 3-point shooting performance.
You know, Jake said one thing. He said he got 2 reasons, the Rockets and whatnot. I got 2 reasons why the Rockets lost. It's Steph Curry and Kevin Durant. Let me tell you right now. Those 2 guys are actually lethal. And one thing that although I will say, Klay Thompson needs to be relied on more. I really agree with. I really think that. And although we think of Steph Curry as the pull up from half court, shoot anywhere, Kevin Durant as the pull up anywhere, shoot anywhere kind of guy. Klay Thompson, when he's hot, I think this is a hot take. He's a better shooter than Curry or Durant.
Yeah,
I think when he's hot. I think when he's hot and when he catches the ball, he doesn't have to be open. He can make any shot. And there were times in the series where he was shooting over 50%, and they weren't giving him the ball, and really the reason they won was because the Rockets choked. So that's one thing that I think. But, so I really think that Klay Thompson really could have contributed more, but let's be honest, Kevin Durant and Stephen Curry are wild.
Yeah, they're good.
Well, Draymond's everly increasing defensive presence in Game 6 and 7 also really helped secure the Warriors' success. He was everywhere, stealing, blocking, just hounding guys across the court on defense.
All right.
And I'm talking about Draymond Green. I just want to sort of talk about him real quick. And watching these games, I felt that Draymond very underperformed, and he was hurting the team more than he helped them. Contrary to your opinion, every time I'd seen that he got the ball in any transition and anything, he was throwing stupid passes, throwing bad passes, and throwing really not good passes that ended up in turnovers a lot of times. I think he had like 6 turnovers in Game 6 or Game 7, and he just looked very out of control at times. And yeah, he contributed to the Warriors not blowing the Rockets out.
I've been going through my email. And I just found this question from Laurel Wentworth. She says, if Chris Paul doesn't get injured, who wins the series? Do the Rockets win, or what? What happens? So I'm going to have to ask the question first to you, Brandon. I want to see what you have to say. Is Laurel Wentworth have a point? Is there something to be said for this?
It's a tough question. It's a tough question to answer because you can never know what could have been. Chris Paul is notorious for getting injured in clutch moments and getting injured in the postseason. I mean, he had never even been to the conference finals before this season, and so it's just sort of, even though I love the dude, I think he's a great player and a surefire Hall of Famer. he is notorious for getting injured in these big moments, and again, it showed with him getting hurt at the end of Game 5 this year. However, even though if Chris Paul does not get hurt, the Warriors still win Game 6 handily, though, I think. Because Game 6 in the Oracle, they weren't going to lose at home like that. But I do think that Chris Paul would definitely have helped them on the defensive end, stopping the Warriors again, and I think they would have given him the grit to kind of get over the edge. And so I do think that if they had Chris Paul, the Rockets would have won this series. However, the Warriors were also without one of their key contributors, Andre Iguodala, in this series, and so it's again, both teams were injured, and so it's not the Warriors' fault that Chris Paul was injured. You play who's on the court, and so. But definitely the Rockets, if they had Chris Paul, they most likely would have won this series,
right, Jake,
in my opinion.
How do you feel about this?
The Rockets could have won Game 6 with Chris Paul healthy. They had the momentum. They already took one in the Oracle. They were clicking on every single end. Chris Paul was helping them survive the third quarter barrage by the Warriors that they're notorious for, and then winning it in Game 4. He could have done it again in Game 6. The Warriors could have been sent home for the first time in 4 years.
And I want to add something to this. You know, we talk about if. But you have to remember, Chris Paul had not been to a conference finals before, and yet he was the only Rockets player who every night showed up to play. You know, apart from some of these role players, he was the superstar on the team. James Harden took a backseat to Chris Paul most of the time during the series, and so I have to say that if they had Chris Paul, what's to say that he wouldn't have showed up again? And frankly, that's what they needed when they were shooting such a poor percentage.
Yeah, I agree. So, yeah, that's definitely good. And this brings us to, even though Chris Paul got hurt, the Warriors ended up winning. And this brings us to the NBA Finals, Game 1 of the NBA Finals. And
Woo!
Part 4 of the Golden State
Cavaliers. Like it.
Dynasty.
And can I just say, first of all,
this is probably the most controversial ending to a NBA Finals game in a long time. And it is just very weird and very wonky at the end of regulation. And, yeah.
Can we just talk about how impressed, at least by Game 1 I am, though, that this is going to be a competitive series?
I disagree with that.
I get what you're saying, but continue.
Yeah.
I personally believe that, you know, I had little interest in watching this series. Of course, I like LeBron. Of course, I like watching basketball, but I really didn't think this was going to be any success for the Cavaliers. I thought this was going to be blown out of the water time for the Cavaliers, and I was surprised to see that that's not what happened, and I was very happy.
See, I have to disagree with you there. I know the score indicates that it was very close, and the game, the Cavaliers probably should have won. George Hill should have made that free throw at the end of the regulation, and even though if he missed it, J.R. Smith should have got the rebound and either called a timeout or passed it out to LeBron, and he 100% would have made that three-point shot. But I say that I disagree with your point because last night, you got 51 points, 50 points, 8 rebounds, and 8 assists out of LeBron, which is way more than you could ask of him, and that you could expect of him on a night-to-night basis. And so even with all this goodness by LeBron, and his supporting cast played very well. Larry Nance played well in this game. He got his chance to come in, and Kevin Love played pretty well. The whole supporting cast did what they were supposed to do, and LeBron had probably the best finals game in NBA history, arguably. And the Warriors still tied him, and then it ended up being in regulation. So I think this could be a 5-game series. I think the Warriors will a 5-game series.
You're giving them one, okay?
I'm only giving them one because I feel the Warriors will let the Cavaliers win one game in Cleveland and then take Game 5 in Oracle so they can win the championship at home.
I'm giving LeBron 2. I think it's in 6. I think it is.
I agree with 6. I mean, especially after this Game 1 performance, which just ended by utter stupidity from J.R. Smith and Tyronn Lue and whatnot.
Well, let's talk about that before. You know, really, that's the thing that. You know, before we start with J.R. Smith, I think, you know, that whole controversy starts with the foul call on LeBron James before. You know, obviously, let's run it back real quick. You know, LeBron was in the paint, and Durant was coming in towards him, and he was not in place at the moment, but he did quickly move outside of the restricted area and set his feet. May have still been moving, that's up in the air, but got hit directly by Durant and fell over. On the floor, they called it a charge. Went back to check and see if LeBron was actually in the restricted area to make sure that it was a charge, and in fact found in the process that it was a blocking foul and then reversed the call. Something that I don't think should be allowed. I don't know how you guys feel about that.
It was obviously a bogus replay. Very bogus call. I think that it should have been should not have been a foul on LeBron James. Should have been a foul on Kevin Durant. as it was initially called on the floor, and the Cavaliers probably should have stolen Game 1 in the Oracle. Probably should have stolen.
And I don't disagree that it was a blocking foul, but I believe that it was something that part of basketball is human error, and to me, basketball players make human errors and foul and turnover just like the referees do. And I think that when you make a call like that on the floor, that's not necessarily an out of bounds play or something like that, and you're looking for a specific thing, such as LeBron being in the foul box. You can't look at something else and find fault with it. I think that's a fault.
And the worst part about this whole fourth quarter overtime collapse is the Cavaliers played such beautiful basketball for the entire game. They were
till the third quarter.
They were keeping on pace with the Warriors early, having good games. JR had a good game in the beginning. He finished with 12 points. I think he had 7 of those in the first quarter or so. And amongst great defense from Draymond, they responded with good defense on KD. Braun was 6 of 6 to start.
Yeah, he ate.
I mean,
the best finals performance in NBA history, point blank, right there.
Best single player performance. I could agree with that. Larry Nance also did great after
getting in the game.
Yeah.
Should have been playing more, honestly.
I agree, but I think all this controversy seems very moot to me. What should have happened is George Hill on a $20 million contract should have hit 2 free throws at the end of the game to win the game for the Cavaliers.
Let's be clear, even with these
George Hill should
intentional
have hit 2
fouls.
free throws. He's an NBA point guard.
These players, even these centers, intentional fouling, you have to make your free throws. You can go to the gym, make your free throws. And I know that the game was on the line. He did make the first one. Let's give him credit where credit is due.
No.
But he got to make the second free throw. And
you got to make both. As a veteran leader of this team, you have to make both those free throws and force Steph Curry to wet some crazy half-court shot.
Golden State had no timeouts left at that point.
And even though we only talk about from George's free throw and on, earlier in the game, as in less than a minute before, LeBron James missed a free throw too.
LeBron James can't shoot though. LeBron James had 51 points.
LeBron James did have 51, but we have to remember that these are double standards that we do have for these free throw shooters. But then, of course, the biggest travesty of it all was J.R. Smith. After the rebound, the biggest problem of the entire game, the biggest controversy was J.R. Smith. To be credited, came in with a great offensive rebound. Actually boxed out KD, got the rebound right under the basket, even created space. Could have gone right up with it, got 2 points, fouled or something. Decided to run out, and that was the end of the game.
Yeah, and then it went to overtime, and the Warriors did their thing and won. So, an embarrassing performance from J.R. Smith in that last second, but overall, the Cavaliers should be excited, I would think. The Cavaliers should be excited about possibly pulling off the biggest upset in NBA Finals.
And we'll see what happens in weeks and days to come, and we'll talk about that again. All right, let's move on to some of the questions that we've gotten from the internet. I know we pulled one earlier from Laurel Wentworth, but we're going to pull some more. This one's from Harshal Patel from... how do you say that, guys?
Asket!
Oh, Asket Airways! And he says, assuming the Warriors win the finals, what if anything can the Cavaliers do to keep LeBron in Cleveland? Oh, this is an interesting question to ask. I'm going to have to throw it to Jake first. I'd like to hear what you have to say, Jake.
I don't think there's a way that LeBron can stay in Cleveland. I really don't see any scenario where he stays except if he wins the finals, which that's not happening.
Yeah.
That's not happening. I mean, there's a reason Demarius Randall offered to buy his 1 million retweeters a signed jersey or whatnot.
Yeah.
It's because it's not happening.
Yeah.
He knows that as a Browns player. There's just... I'm sorry, Cleveland fans. You're gonna go 1-3 in the past 4 years.
What do you have to think about this, Brendan?
Here's the only thing that I think the Cavaliers can do. I do think they will lose this finals series to the Warriors, who are very good, obviously. And the only way that LeBron will stay in Cleveland, I think, is they have to bring in another superstar to LeBron James that he can rely on and he can make plays. Kevin Love is a good perennial all-star. He's very good, but he's not a playmaker. He's not a guy that can facilitate the offense and take the load off LeBron from having to basically have a hand in creating every single basket that the Cavaliers make. So what I think they could do, one thing, is they could try to put together some sort of package, some sort of something to get Chris Paul or DeMarcus Cousins or DeAndre Jordan into Cleveland.
They got to do something.
They got to do something. I think Boogie's a free agent, so they could try to sign him. Although the Cavaliers have a lot of wonky contracts that are paying a lot of guys a lot too much money.
Everybody on the
veterans.
roster is 30 years old. And
Yeah,
makes $20 million.
I think the Cavaliers are going to try to gear up for one or several more LeBron playoff runs. I think they should try to go after trying to trade Kevin Love and either a draft pick or some other player like maybe Jeff Green or a Tristan Thompson or something like that, or Larry Nance to the Rockets for Chris Paul and either a draft pick or maybe just even Chris Paul by himself. LeBron and Chris Paul are pretty much best friends. He's the godfather of LeBron's children, and I think if he came there, he could take the load off LeBron and have some playmaking capabilities where someone else can facilitate the offense and let LeBron rest a little bit so he can put in more effort on the defensive end than he has this year.
And let's remember, I know this is a totally new Cavs team apart from some pieces, which honestly should be benched at this point in time. Every year, the Cavaliers have had one of the oldest rosters in the finals, or that have been in the finals. This year, it is definitely a little younger, but it's time for them to make a move that's going to give them a young developmental player that they don't have to put all their chips into LeBron James all the time, where they can actually work on developing somebody and not trading away all their core assets. Kevin Love is 27, 28, 29. He's reaching the end of his prime, and he's definitely not going to be the guy that we saw in Minnesota once before. And LeBron James, although he's defying father time, he's going to get worse at some point. And so I really think the Cavaliers need to keep a foundation for their future, and that involves making trades.
Yeah.
Well, they have that developmental asset you're talking about in my Brooklyn Nets 8th overall pick this season, which is
you can only do so much with an 8th overall pick, though.
Correct, because my Nets overachieved. That's what I'm talking about, my Brooklyn grit. But I don't think that Kobe Altman, the Cavs GM, wants to give away that pick because he's dead set on accepting that LeBron's leaving and trying to build some future off of that pick in Jetty Osman.
Well, you could also build your future around trading away that pick as well. Although I will say, we see Donovan Mitchell go 13-14 in the draft last year. You never know what you're going to get. You have a chance.
Yeah.
At that 8th pick.
This draft class is amazing.
It's a great draft class.
Probably at the 8th overall pick, they could pick someone like Trae Young, who I don't like, but a lot of people seem to like him, and
there's a whole bunch of guys that could go at that point in time. We got a lot of scoring guards, a lot of big men that we can put in there, and frankly, you could do something with it. And if you take a chance on one of these guys, you end up with something that maybe could work, like Donovan Mitchell did. So, all right, we're going to go on to our next question. We've got a question here from Benjamin Yaden. He says, can the Warriors' poor performance in the conference finals that we just saw be attributed to Iguodala's injury, or how important is he going forward for the Warriors in guarding LeBron and whatnot? I'll give this one to Brandon so he can say first.
Well, saying the Warriors' poor performance is sort of a harsh understanding of their playoffs. They won the series and they made it to the NBA Finals, but many people thought that they would, including myself, thought that they would handle the Rockets more easily and not have to go so toe-to-toe with them and stress out about getting to the finals. And so I think Andre Iguodala is more of an underrated player than people realize. He's a lot more important. He's kind of like Draymond Green in the sense that he's sort of an anchor. He's a good defensive player. He can match up with LeBron James.
Doesn't get technicals.
He doesn't get technicals. He can lock up with LeBron.
He's not a douche.
He can match up with LeBron James in a sense and can kind of staunch the 51 points that he might drop. And he's just a great defensive player. He can shoot the 3-ball pretty well. He can he's just a good assist man. He's a good assist man, and he's a glue guy, another glue guy. And they missed him a lot in this series against the Rockets. And if they have him going forward, they will easily beat the Cavaliers.
Well, the most important part about not having Iggy is that you don't have the Hamptons 5, the death lineup, which has been the most predominant lineup in this league for the past 4 years. One that absolutely crushes opponents at every single opponent that they save specifically for the playoffs. It's basically a anti-LeBron lineup, due almost entirely to Iggy's defense on him. So having that is something that we could see LeBron take advantage of if, again, his role players such as Kevin Love and George will step up.
I think this is pretty obvious. He's obviously a big factor in the defensive end. Okay, we have one more question, and this is also from Laura Wentworth, one of our biggest fans, it seems like. She says, would a LeBron James loss in this year's finals tarnish his legacy, or would it be attributed to the poorness of his team? And honestly, I think that's a great question because I have some things to say about that. But I'll let Jake talk first. What's up, Jake?
Well, I don't think his legacy can't be that tarnished by another finals loss. 6.
Another one.
Can we just talk about the fact that he's played harder teams than Jordan ever had to touch?
That is
That's
completely
a
incorrect.
topic for another day. That's a
The Warriors.
Come
are,
on next week.
Yeah, for real.
Live on 5.
The Warriors are one of the best lineups in history, but LeBron's legacy is
The
built.
best.
LeBron's legacy. One of the main points of it is his durability. His age 33 season, playing all 82 games for the first time and whatnot. So the biggest advantage he will have over Jordan in the GOAT debate is that he doesn't retire twice and play baseball.
Not yet.
Or maybe the best argument is the fact that he has better stats in every category except for points.
Well, and he's also scoring as many points as.
And he's scoring
Jordan.
almost as many points as
Yeah.
Jordan.
My argument for this is that LeBron just plainly getting this team to the finals. This team is very underperforming. Is not that good, and he facing 2 Game 7s throughout this road. It's just mind-boggling to watch. He's the best player I've ever watched, and my argument for this is, if you put Michael Jordan on this Cavaliers team instead of LeBron James, they're not making the finals. In my opinion, they're not going to make it. LeBron's a special dude, and he's a special guy that can carry a team to
He's a
finals.
special
as
coach,
he's done.
right?
He's a special coach, man. Tyronn Lue,
Best
better
coach
watch
in
out.
history.
Ugliest coach in history.
Alright, so we're going to conclude our NBA section there and move on to our weekly Jag's Corner.
Jags Corner!
Yes, sir.
So we're going to begin with a little bit of, not really like breaking news, but just a little interesting tidbit. Our boy Mercedes Lewis.
Oh my
Signed
God.
by the Green Bay Packers.
Yeah.
Do you guys think that Mercedes is going to be able to have any like major role in this package?
Honestly, I'm happy to know. I mean, I think as a tight end 2 or a tight end 3, he's very effective. Some of these lineups that the football packages go with these days, these 3 tight end lineups where you don't have more than one wide receiver out,
Are deadly because you got cornerbacks that can't guard the tall, bigger tight ends. And I think Mercedes Lewis being 6'7", he's a big guy. He's a big guy.
big man.
And not only that, but he's also been in his total career known as a blocking tight end, not only just a receiving threat. And I think going with the more receiving threat, the great arm of Aaron Rodgers, he can do a lot of things. Protect him in the pocket, provide a red zone outlet, be 6'7". I mean, that's just a quality in itself. I'm really happy to see him get signed, and his loyalty is still in Jacksonville, obviously.
Oh, yeah. He was a prominent player, prominent tight end, a benchmark of this Jacksonville Jaguar team that we so support for many years now, and I'm sad to see him go, but he is getting toward the end of his career, I think, toward the end of his prime. Even though he had a pretty good year, a fair year last year with Blake Bortles, he's going to have a better quarterback, an arguably better quarterback, and Aaron Rodgers. Arguably better quarterback than Blake Bortles and Aaron Rodgers, and so I think even though he's not probably going to get as much playing time, he's probably not going to do as much, and his athleticism is waning. He will, being a smart guy, a smart player, a veteran of this league, a teammate. He will be a good locker room presence, and he'll be good for the Green Bay Packers. Even though they're probably going to get eliminated in the first round of the playoffs
By the
Jaguars.
Even though it's different divisions.
Yeah, they're in different conferences.
He'll find his role there, and he'll be a solid player for the money that he's been paid.
And then let's talk about, with this new draft that we've got going on, we've got with the Texans, they're looking great. And I want to see if the Jaguars, do you guys think that they're going to win the division again?
That's a completely unrelated topic, so we're going to let Jake do his thing. What's the next thing on our Jag Corner list?
Well, I'm not done talking about Mercedes.
Oh, baby!
Why can't we talk about the Texans?
Mercedes Lewis, he was signed to help this run game, in which they have a strong committee of young guys with Montgomery, Williams, Charles.
Hey, Lacey can make a comeback. Who knows?
Aaron Rodgers can play receiver.
Who knows?
Not like Tom Brady, though, let's be honest.
But, he was signed to boost this run game. He's not going to be as much of a catching threat, especially because they signed Jimmy Graham, who is an amazing end zone target. But, yeah, he's a great veteran guy. He's a nice guy. He's a really nice guy.
Frankly, I think his biggest threat is to the men and women of Green Bay, because you already know that fine man going to be dating every woman in Green Bay.
Moving on to our other side of the Jacksonville Jaguars team, the defensive side. Recently an article was published by Bleacher Report rating the Jacksonville Jaguars as the best defensive line in the NFL. Which
That's a given.
This comes as no surprise to all of us here in the 904, but with recent acquisitions such as Calais Campbell in last free agency and Malik Jackson, I think in the free agency before. And also drafting Taven Bryan.
I have to ask.
In this NFL draft, the Jaguars lineup is just stacked. Honestly, on the defensive line, they were great last year. arguably the best teams in the league. Them and Minnesota had the 2 best defensive lines in the league, I believe. And this year, we're even deeper. We're more experienced. We're more talented. And we're going to be a beast to stop. And hot take, they're my Super Bowl pick this year with Blake Bortles at the helm and Calais Campbell leading that defensive line, which is without a doubt the best in football.
I have a question though about this as defensive line. If I want to, in my opinion, Taven Bryan, had he even not been drafted to boost that depth on the defensive side of the ball, we still would have had the best defensive line. I think one of the reasons our defensive line is so good is because of the depth. Do you guys think that we would still be number 1 maybe over the Eagles, the Vikings of the world, without drafting such a defensive tackle?
I think Taven Bryan obviously gives us depth and also adds some color, gives some white to this offensive defensive line. So that gives us some more diversity and some more, again, as depth. And he's a young guy, but he has some great tutelage above him, some great people that can tell him how to do his thing. So that's definitely very good.
Yeah, he's been mentored by Calais during the start of OTAs and such, and I'm ready to see Saxonville part 2.
I'm ready to see Saxonville. The teal curtain, baby. Let's go.
Moving on to another recent Bleacher Report article. They're doing all their normal goofy stuff, trying to hype up everybody for the next season. They rated the best wide receiver groups in the league, and our Jacksonville Jaguars, our room of wide receiver 2 is rated at 16th. I'm happy with that.
I gotta say, I have to think that's very high for us. Frankly, my opinion of the Jags right now. One of my opinions of the Jags, that is our biggest weakness. I think wide receiver is by far the biggest weakness on the team. Obviously, the biggest strength is quarterback, but the biggest weakness on the team
is quarterback.
That's not true.
Biggest,
Blake Bortles is good.
Biggest weakness on the team is probably wide receiver, with the likes of Allen Robinson leaving us. I still don't understand why the Jaguars let go of Allen Hurns, somebody who came undrafted to us and really balled out and got a big contract. I really feel like he deserved to stay. But now our wide receiver 1, who is it? Westbrook? D. Westbrook?
Our wide receiver 1, that's the problem. That's why we're number 16.
I think we need...
Our wide receiver core, we don't have a number 1, which is the problem right now. I think there's going to be no preseason or training camp number 1, and there's going to be a fight in these first half of this NFL season to see who's going to be the favorite target of Blake Bortles. We have a room of number 2 receivers with Dante Moncrief being signed to a 1-year deal.
Right.
Marquise Lee being signed to, I think, a 4-year extension.
Keelan Cole.
Keelan Cole, an undrafted player who showed out last year. D.D. Westbrook, a guy drafted from Oklahoma who hasn't played up to his potential that we think yet. And DJ Chark, who was drafted in the second round this year in the draft by the Jaguars. And so we have a lot of guys who have potential, but we don't think any of them right now. There's no number 1 on this team. And so the 16th rating in this Bleacher Report rankings is a fair estimate, I think.
It's a bit high. But
The biggest question about our wide receiver room this year is, can Marquise Lee become a number 1 wide receiver? Which he had a good year last year as a partial number 1 option.
I don't like him.
I don't like him either.
I don't like him
He
either. He drops a lot of balls.
Complains a lot.
He gets a lot of penalties.
Mm-hmm.
So we'll see how he can improve on last year's strong year.
Yeah.
But our wide receiver group is mainly veterans, wide receiver 2s, and a bunch of guys that need to step up, like our rookie Chark and our second-year sophomores, Westbrook and Cole.
And also, something to be considered is, all jokes aside, Blake Bortles isn't a top 10 quarterback in the league. And we really need to put wide receivers, weapons around him so that we can really accentuate his positives. And the truth is, and the fact is that in the past he hasn't had the greatest wide receiving core, and so we really can't say necessarily that he's that bad or that good, but I'd really like to see him in a position where there's a lot of good receivers around him.
Yeah, and this is the first year that Blake Bortles has had the same offensive coordinator in 2 consecutive seasons. So he's looked very sharp at OTAs as of recently with these new additions and these upcoming receivers that he has now. And the future is definitely bright in Jacksonville with our running attack as well as our passing attack, as we mentioned here. And so yeah, there's high hopes for this season in Jacksonville, and we're playing good. Speaking of this rushing attack that we saw, the figurehead for this rushing attack is obviously Leonard Fournette, who was picked number 4 in last year's draft by the Jacksonville Jaguars, and he had a pretty great rookie season. He rushed for over 1,000 yards, and now many are saying this year with our new offensive line acquisitions, as well as a more potent passing attack, hopefully, that Leonard Fournette could have the statistics to be a potential MVP candidate.
Yeah,
Jake, what do you think about that?
MVP.
I don't think it's going to happen just because there's Todd Gurley in the league. And guys like Alvin Kamara. And Tom Brady.
Tom, the goat.
The thing is that running backs usually don't get MVPs. It's almost exclusively a quarterback award. So, who knows? We can see Blake Bortles.
Well, what about Antonio Brown?
Antonio Brown.
Had he not been injured, he would have won MVP last year.
He would not have won it. He could have. There's an argument to be made for him, but it's a quarterback-driven league, and the NFL usually loves to give it to a quarterback. And Tom Brady was playing an outstanding season, arguably one of the best of his long career in his 40th year.
Now, what about David Johnson? His return. I was talking to Jake earlier, and I mentioned that I think running backs. You can only judge them on a year-by-year basis, only on their last year, because of how ruthless the position is. And so now that David Johnson has spent a whole year injured, it's hard to say if he'll go back to the dominance he had 2 years ago.
Yeah.
And I just want to think, will he be the top running back, or will it be Le'Veon Bell once again?
Well, I think those guys both are mediocre guys, but no one can compare to my Leonard Fournette. I think that he
mediocre guys.
I think that he is a really good MVP candidate, and I think that even if he does not win MVP, he is just going to be a solid guy that we can rely on if he stays healthy. And I said earlier, the future is bright in Jacksonville, especially in our running game.
All right, that concludes our podcast for this week. Thank you all for listening, and we'll be back next week to talk about the rest of the NBA Finals and whatnot. See you then.
See y'all then.
Hey.